You unlock this door with the key of imagination. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of sound. A dimension of sight. A dimension of mind. You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You've just crossed over into the pop complex. What's up, guys? It's Matt again, and welcome back to the Pop Complex. Now, today I'm going to be counting down my top... Everything's still in black and white. Hang on, guys, I'm going to fix this. There we go. Much better. Anyway, guys, today I'm going to be counting down my top 10 personal favorite Twilight Zone episodes. So the Twilight Zone was a television show that aired on CBS for 5 seasons from 1959 to 1964 and was created by American television writer Rod Serling. So, guys, I want to warn you, this contains some spoilers now, so if you haven't seen the Twilight Zone, the original series, you've had 56 years, go out and watch it now. I consider it one of the best television shows of all time. A lot of these episodes are not necessarily going to be considered the top 10 best or greatest Twilight Zone episodes. Now, some of them on this list will be, but today I'm going to be counting down my top 10 personal favorite episodes. Alright, guys, so without further ado, let's begin. Number 10, Where is Everybody? This is the very first episode of the Twilight Zone from season 1 in 1959, and the very first episode of the Twilight Zone I ever watched. The episode opens with an unnamed man in a flight suit alone on a dirt road. He has no idea of who he is or how he got there. He eventually finds a diner, walks in, and finds plenty of evidence of life, such as hot coffee, freshly made pies, and even a jukebox playing music. But he cannot find a single person around other than himself. Constantly feeling like he is being watched, he wanders to the nearby town where he finds a parked truck with a female passenger who only turns out to be a mannequin. All over town, the man discovers many signs of life all around him. There's a ringing payphone, there's a lit cigar in the police station, and recently occupied jail cells. As night begins to fall, his attention is directed to an illuminated movie theater marquee where the film's title, Battle Hymn, sparks his memory that he is in the Air Force. After wandering inside the theater, he panics after discovering no one is inside the projector booth after the movie starts. Terrified and crashing into a full-length mirror, he runs out into the street in terror. After discovering a pedestrian call button, he pushes it over and over again, begging for help. The call button is now revealed to be a panic button, and the man in question is revealed to be Sergeant Mike Ferris inside an isolation booth to determine if he is physically and mentally sound for an extended trip to the moon alone. The entire experience had been nothing more than a sensory deprivation hallucination. Number 9, A Penny for Your Thoughts. I'm sure that nearly all of us have fantasized at some point about what it would be like to read people's minds and hear their inner thoughts. Well, this season 2 episode from 1961 explores that very idea. It stars Dick York as Hector Poole, an insecure bank clerk who tosses a coin into a newspaper vendor's open box to pay for his paper. The coin amazingly lands right on its edge. Suddenly after this occurrence, Hector can now read other people's thoughts. He's very confused at first because he can hear them but he cannot see them actually speaking. As his strange day rolls on at work, he hears the thoughts of everyone, from his boss's weekend affair plans with his mistress, to his secret admirer co-worker Helen Turner, to a businessman taking out a $200,000 loan in an attempt to win back money he embezzled from his company through horse track betting. Hector angers his boss when he confronts the businessman about this, and the businessman becomes offended and leaves. Hector's day takes another dramatic turn when he hears the thoughts of the elderly and long-term trusted employee Smithers. Smithers' thoughts reveal to Hector that he plans on walking out that night with thousands of bank dollars and escaping to Bermuda. After a nearly impossible convincing by Hector to his boss that Smithers' plan is plausible, Hector's boss tries to catch Smithers in the act, Smithers, however, proves himself innocent of the crime by having no cash as he left. Because of this, Hector is fired, and Smithers later admits that he had always thought about doing that very thing, but never had the guts to actually go through with it. As Hector is able to convince Helen of his newfound power and his subsequent frustration it has caused him, Hector's boss learns that the businessman had been arrested for gambling with company money. Hector's boss offers to reinstate Hector with the bank, but Hector uses this knowledge of his boss's affair to blackmail him into giving him an accounts manager promotion. He also insists on a Bermuda vacation for Smithers at the bank's expense. As Hector returns home with Helen, whom he is now confident enough to have started a relationship with, he sees his coin still standing on its edge. He buys another paper, tosses in another coin, and knocks it down, no longer having the ability to read minds, as he is a new, transformed man and no longer needs it. Number 8. Little Girl Lost. This episode from Season 3 in 1962 seems reminiscent and a possible precursor to the 1982 movie Poltergeist. Chris and Ruth Miller are awakened in the night by whimpering from their young daughter Tina. Chris goes into Tina's room to check on her, but cannot find her anywhere, despite the fact that she can still be heard calling for help from somewhere in the room. Ruth is called into the room and is also mystified. Chris calls their physicist friend Bill to come over for help. Chris also lets their dog Mac inside the house, who had been incessantly barking from outside. The dog Mac immediately runs under the bed, where he promptly disappears, but he can still be heard distantly barking, just like Tina's cries for help. When Bill arrives, he and Chris move Tina's bed. When they examine the wall behind the bed, Bill's hand passes right through and into another dimension. Bill explains that sometimes our world's 3 dimensions can cross parallel with the 4th dimension, and if they followed Tina in, they could become lost forever. Despite Bill's theory, Chris reaches in anyway and falls into the 4th dimension. In this abstract, shifting reality, Chris sees Tina and Mac and calls them back to him. When they finally close in, Bill grabs them all and pulls them back into the bedroom. At the episode's conclusion, Bill explains that he had been holding on to Chris the whole time, despite him feeling like he was completely in the 4th dimension, and that the portal was closing. Another few seconds, and half of you would have been here, and the other half. Number 7. It's a Good Life. This episode is from Season 3 in 1961. Child star Bill Mumy plays 6-year-old Anthony Fremont, a child with godlike mental power that allows him to do virtually anything, include reading minds. We quickly find out that he has isolated all the adults in their town by disabling cars and blocking TV and radio signals. Anthony creates horrible creatures and then sends them into a place called the Cornfield. Everyone lives in fear of Anthony because of what he would do to them if he were opposed. He banishes everyone who thinks unhappy thoughts to the cornfield from which there is no return. In fear-ridden attempts to keep Anthony happy, everyone tells Anthony that everything he does is good, real good. One evening, one of the adults, Dan Hollis, is celebrating his birthday. One of the presents from his wife is one of the 5 remaining bottles of brandy left in the town. As he begins to become more and more intoxicated by the brandy, he begins to express his frustration at the state of the town and how they're forced to live their miserable lives. Dan finally snaps and calls Anthony a monster and a murderer. He orders the other adults to attack Anthony and to end his reign of terror. After none of the other adults have the courage to act, Anthony turns Dan into a horrifying jack-in-the-box with his lifeless head bobbing back and forth on its spring. Anthony's father begs him to have mercy and send Dan to the cornfield, which he does. As the episode ends, Anthony causes snow to start falling outside, snow that will kill all of the town's crops and send them into starvation. As Anthony's father begins to scold him for this, the terrified smiles on everyone's faces causes him to just say in a frightened voice, "But you're making it snow, a real good thing, and tomorrow's going to be a real good day." Number 6, Night Call. This is another one of the truly terrifying Twilight Zone episodes. There's something truly chilling about the telephone and the thought of never really knowing who is on the other end of the line. This episode from Season 5 in 1964 introduces us to an elderly woman, Yehwa Keene, who begins receiving strange anonymous phone calls in the middle of a stormy night. At first the calls are only static, but they soon become a man's voice moaning. The calls keep repeating, with the chilling voice asking hello over and over. Finally the voice asks, "Where are you?" and "I want to talk to you." Utterly terrified, Yehwa screams for the voice to leave her alone. After contacting the phone company, Yehwa is informed that they were able to trace the call to a line that had fallen in a cemetery. Yehwa and her housekeeper visit the cemetery, where she is shocked to find the down line resting on the grave of her long-dead fiancé, Brian Douglas. Yehwa explains that she was always stubborn and insisted on having her own way, and that Brian always caved in and did whatever she said. A week before they were to be married, she had insisted on driving that day. She lost control of the car and hit a tree, killing Brian and crippling herself. Realizing that she can now talk to Brian and will never be alone again, she goes home to call his ghost, only to hear Brian say that she had told him to leave her alone earlier and that he always does what she says. The line goes dead, leaving Yehwa crying alone in her bed. Number 5, Nick of Time. This iconic episode from Season 2 in 1960 introduces us to newlyweds Don and Pat Carter. Don is played by William Shatner. When their car breaks down in Ridgeview, Ohio, they have lunch at the Busy Bee Cafe, where they wait for their car to be repaired. The booth they are seated in has a novelty Mystic Seer fortune teller machine on the table that answers yes or no questions for a penny each. Don asks the machine if he will get a promotion at work, to which the response reads, "It has been decided in your favor." Don then calls his office and finds out that he has indeed been promoted. Amazed at this strange prediction, Don then asks if the car will be repaired on time, to which the machine answers, "You may never know." This prompts them to continue asking more questions for more details, to which they receive the prediction that leaving the diner before 3 p.m. could be dangerous. So Don tries to stall for time, but Pat convinces him to leave the diner a few minutes before 3. While crossing the street, Don and Pat are nearly hit by a car. After calming down, they go back into the diner and ask the Mystic Seer machine about their car again, to which it replies, "It has already been taken care of." Then the mechanic comes in to tell them that their car has been fixed. After Don, and even the still skeptical Pat, continue to test the machine with their questions, Don begins to ask the seer where they will live and tries to narrow down the answer with yes or no questions. Pat finally convinces Don that even if the seer is really capable of predicting the future, that it doesn't really matter because Don can make his own future. Realizing this truth, both Don and Pat leave the diner. As they leave, an older, distraught couple enter the diner and go right to the Mystic Seer machine and ask it if they will ever leave Ridgeview. They are visibly devastated by the answer they were given. Don and Pat are shown leaving Ridgeview. Number 4, 22. In this episode from Season 2 in 1961, dancer Liz Powell has been hospitalized suffering from exhaustion. Liz has been experiencing a recurring nightmare where a loud ticking clock wakes her up. She knocks over a glass of water and shatters it on the floor. She follows the sound of footsteps that she hears into the hall. She sees the shadowy figure of a nurse whom she follows down the elevator and to the hospital morgue, room 22. The nurse says to her, "Room for one more, honey." Liz screams in terror and the dream ends. Liz's doctor suggests that she attempts lucid dreaming to change the details of this recurring nightmare. That night, Liz tries to change the dream by reaching for a pack of cigarettes instead of the glass of water, but the dream still ends up with Liz following the sinister nurse down to the morgue. Liz's doctor is still convinced that she is just exhausted and keeps her sedated, but he does comment to the nurse that he thinks that it's odd that the room number to the morgue is indeed room number 22, and Liz would have no knowledge of this. After several days, Liz is released from the hospital and goes to the airport to fly to her next booking. After being told that she will be on flight 22, Liz becomes terrified and begins experiencing sensory details from her nightmare. She hears the loud ticking of the clock. She bumps into a woman with a vase, dropping it and shattering it on the floor just like the glass. She hears magnified footsteps from the hall. She crosses the tarmac to her plane and climbs the stairs. When she reaches the top, a flight attendant greets her with, "Room for one more, honey." Terrified at this, Liz stumbles back down and runs back into the terminal. As the airport staff tries to calm her down, she sees Flight 22 take off from the window and explode in midair. Number 3. Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. This is probably the most famous and most frequently referenced episode of The Twilight Zone. From Season 5 in 1963, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet tells the story of Robert Wilson, portrayed by William Shatner, in his second Twilight Zone appearance. Robert is attempting his first plane ride since suffering a nervous breakdown 6 months earlier. As the plane trip commences, Robert begins to see a hideous gremlin outside his window and on the plane's wing. Robert begins to see the gremlin tampering with the wiring and tearing the plane apart. As he frantically tries to alert his wife and the crew, the gremlin will simply not appear to anyone but Robert. This, of course, leads his wife to the conclusion that Robert is suffering from another mental breakdown. After spitting out a sedative pill given to him by the crew, Robert manages to steal a sleeping policeman's revolver. After strapping himself in, he opens the emergency exit door and attempts to shoot the gremlin. After the plane lands and Robert is being wheeled away in a straitjacket, the final scene reveals the damage to the plane's engine, confirming that Robert had been right all along. Number 2. Time Enough at Last. This episode is also one of the most iconic Twilight Zone episodes on my list. The episode from Season 1 in 1959 brings us Burgess Meredith as Henry Bemis, a lovable, awkward little character who has an insatiable passion for reading. He just can't seem to get enough. We soon find out, however, that Henry's life is full of those who prevent him from the one thing that brings his mundane life passion, his reading. Most notably, we see this from his boss at the bank where he works and from his cruel, nagging wife. His wife is especially evil to Henry by asking him to recite poetry from one of his books. He is eager to do so, but finds that she has marked out the lines on every page. She then goes on to destroy the book by ripping the pages out. The next day at work, Henry takes his lunch break inside the bank's vault where he can read without being disturbed. He sees a newspaper with the headline, "H-bomb capable of total destruction." Moments later, an enormous explosion rocks the vault and knocks Henry unconscious. When Henry comes to, he wanders out of the vault to find the bank destroyed and everyone in it dead. He soon realizes that sudden nuclear war has devastated the Earth and seemingly everyone in it. With enough canned food to last his lifetime, but with no other human survivors, Henry nearly surrenders to despair and considers taking his own life, until he discovers that the remains of the public library and most of its books are intact. After sorting all the books for his now uninterrupted reading for the years to come, Henry bends over to pick up his first book, stumbles, and loses his thick glasses, which shatter on the ground. Henry picks them up horrified, bursting into tears, because he is now surrounded by all the books he can now never read. Number 1. Living Doll. This is by far the most terrifying episode of The Twilight Zone to me and my personal favorite. This is the episode that really sums up what I consider to be the best quintessential qualities of The Twilight Zone. From Season 5 in 1963, Living Doll tells the story of Eric Streeter, played by Telly Savalas, who recently married his wife Annabelle. Wait, speaking of evil dolls, Annabelle? Coincidence? Guys, let me know in the comments what you think about that. Annabelle has a young daughter, Christy, from her previous marriage. In an attempt to comfort her daughter from the way that Eric mistreats Christy, Annabelle buys her a new doll, Talkie Tina. Talkie Tina starts innocently enough with phrases like, "My name is Talkie Tina, and I love you very much." That's when Christy winds her up. But when a frustrated Eric winds up the doll, Tina responds with, "My name is Talkie Tina, and I don't like you." Officially terrified by this, Eric tries numerous ways to get rid of and destroy the doll, including binding her up in a trash can, a vise, a blowtorch, and even a circular saw, but to no avail. These attempts only make things worse as Tina now issues her final threat. "My name is Talkie Tina, and I'm going to kill you." With Annabelle not believing her husband's claims about the doll, Eric hears noises downstairs later that night. When he goes to investigate, he trips on Tina lying on the stairs. When Annabelle finds her husband's lifeless body and Tina, she picks up the doll to hear her say, "My name is Talkie Tina, and you'd better be nice to me." Well, guys, that was my top 10 personal favorite Twilight Zone episodes. So let me know what you think down below in the comments. If you could, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well. It really helps the channel out. Also hit the bell icon so that you're notified anytime that I upload a new video to the Pop Complex. Guys, you don't want to miss a thing. The channel's really growing right now. So let me know what you think down below in the comments. Also, let's spread the channel on Patreon. My Patreon is always patreon.com/the Pop Complex. You can go there and support the channel as well. So guys, once again, thanks for watching. This was the Pop Complex, and I'll see you later.